Well, hey there, everyone. I'm Diane Lee, the Marketing and Communications Director at ISI. I apologize in advance for some of the feedback that we're getting right here at the beginning. That usually happens, don't know why, but it looks like it's corrected itself. Anyway, today, Earth Day 2021, yay! We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about climate change, very little bit, hopefully, on the infrastructure policy. And then we're going to talk about Envision and how it is the solution to building back better. So my guest today, I'm so proud to introduce John Williams, the CEO of COO of AutoCase, and he is the chairman of the board for ISI. So welcome, John.
Hi. Nice to be here.
And we also have Frank Shirkow, who is co-hosting today. He is a member of our academic committee, also a member of our Sustain It or Explain It task force, which is this podcast, Sustain It or Explain It. And Frank, I believe you have 7 engineering states that you are qualified to be an engineer. Tell me what that is. 7? Is that right?
So I'm registered in 7 states plus the EVNSP certificate, plus a variety of other things. So I've been involved in ASCE. I was the chapter president here in Oregon, branch president, and I was at Oregon State for about 6 years. And I do consulting mostly in the transportation area, and I'm elected board member for the local water district here in Oregon.
All right, so there you go. And you can always check out their bios on our website and go to the About ISI. You'll see John Williams there and also Frank Shirkow. So thank you guys for being here, and thanks to our followers for joining us. I am actually going to put the comment section up, so if anybody has a comment they'd like to make, feel free. I always say keep it classy, San Diego. So we'll start by talking about Earth Day. And I would love to hear a little bit of history, because I know Frank has some to share with us. He also has a really cool story. I know John does as well. So we'll start with Frank. Frank, tell us a little history and share your story with us.
So I think we ought to take a minute and at least acknowledge where we've been on Earth Day. And some of it goes back to actually some dark times when the United States had a variety of examples of really bad environmental disasters or incidents or events. And part of this also goes back to the book, The Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, published in '62, which talked about the pesticides that were called DDT that were weakening the eggshells of birds and what would happen if we continued to use that in an indiscriminate way. We also had, I think, for me, one of the issues that was most awakening was the whole issue we actually touched on a little bit when I was in college, which was the whole area of phosphates in laundry detergents. Doesn't sound very sexy, but those phosphates got into then the water resource system, and the algae blooms in rivers and lakes was abundant, and the fish kill was abundant because of some of those incidents. I spent 6 years in Cleveland area. Of course, the joke was the river caught on fire a variety of times, and one of the times it caught on fire was late '69. Time magazine did a cover photo. They actually used a photo from '52. This was an ongoing problem at the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, and that awakened people.
It actually caught on fire, or no, it didn't catch on fire?
Right. There was so much oil slick on top of the water that there was a regular fire on the water in the river. And the '69 incident caused $50,000 in damage, including a railroad bridge and a variety of other dock areas. It then got, Time magazine then got it on the cover of the magazine in I think December 70 or so, and that awakened a whole variety of other stories and other incidents that came out. One of the things that people don't realize is that when the National Environmental Policy Act was passed and the Environmental Protection Agency was formed, it wasn't formed under Kennedy or Johnson or Truman or Bill Clinton. It was formed under Richard Nixon.
Yep.
Richard Nixon was the guy who signed the bill and organized the EPA as it first got off the ground. I had the ability to take, when I was a senior in college, I had the ability to take a environmental law course, and it was one of the first environmental law courses offered.
Wow.
We had no textbook. This was 74. It was a whole stack. It was about 6 or 8 inches, a whole stack of Xeroxed court cases, because the whole environmental issue was so new that there was no consolidated kind of academic view of the process. So we were working from court cases that were just emerging as the course was being taught. But so I think the first thing I want to go to.
What I'm hearing is, from your story right there, what I'm hearing is we have come a really long way. Because there are times when I feel like we have not. You know, I feel like, gosh, we've been talking about this forever and nothing's getting done. But from what I'm hearing, it sounds like we have come a long way.
I do want to give, before we leave the history part, I do want to give kudos to somebody maybe people have forgotten, which is the parent of Earth Day, which is Senator Gaylord Nelson from Wisconsin. And I've got my little Earth Day pin. That's from 1970. I was a freshman at college, and there was a crowd gathering together at the steps of Science Hall, and it was Gaylord Nelson on the steps of Science Hall talking to a whole gaggle of students who had gathered for the first Earth Day. And there were the similar gatherings at other colleges, universities, and other places around the country on that day. And that was really the kickoff. He was the guy who thought it up and organized it and made it happen, and then pushed a whole variety of environmental legislative bills to get things rolling and to refine our whole framework as it first started post 1970.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, Frank, this is Frank's button a little closer. I took a picture of it. And so, Frank, you know what I think you should do with that button? You could probably make some money off that.
Oh, no.
There aren't too many of those left, I'm surprised it's not green, actually. I would think the first one would be green, but it's yellow. Go figure. Anyway. I love the story, Frank, and I know John's got his own story and his is pretty interesting too. So John, share with us your Earth Day story, if you would.
Sure, I'd love to. Let's fast forward 18 years to 1988, which is 33 years ago. And on Earth Day of that year, I was part of a launch of the first recycling education program aimed at young children from toddlers to preschoolers. It was a result of a project that I was involved with the city of Pittsburgh, and outreach that I did to Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And my bet is that there are people in our audience right now who grew up with Mr. Rogers. My son Brian at that time was 2 years old, and I discovered that the only way I could stay in bed on Saturday mornings was to join him as he watched Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And I learned a lot from that experience, including the degree to which young children are engaged with the environment and how willing they are to trust the adults in their lives. I realized that my actions in my personal life, as well as my professional life, would lead to either positive or negative outcomes for Brian and now his brother Devin's future. So it matters a great deal to me. And that's that was a catalyst for my outreach to Fred Rogers in the first place. And then later on, my commitment to ISI, the Envision rating system, as well as my own company, AutoCase. And recently I was reminded, I keep this magazine beside me. This is the New York Times magazine dated March 7th. And what you see on the cover of the magazine are climate refugees. They're amongst thousands and thousands of human beings as well as species who are forced to be on the move thanks to climate change. And I feel that I owe it, and Frank owes it, and you owe it, Diane, to future generations to do good and great things today that will change the world for the better tomorrow.
I totally concur. And I don't have great stories about Mr. Rogers. I do remember watching Mr. Rogers, though. And I don't have any stories about when it first began. But I can tell you that speaking on behalf of the refugee situation, when I read this book, The Uninhabitable Earth, which I think everyone should read because it talks about climate change. And one of the things they talk about is the how much worse things are going to get with sea level rise and water issues, how displacement of people is really going to be a big deal in the next century. So, or in the decades to come, rather. So that book right there changed my mind, and so did this one, The Sixth Extinction. So that kind of lit a fire under me to care more about Earth Day, climate change, and just that's one reason I'm working to try to promote Envision. So so uniquely different, eras we have here that we're talking about on Earth Day, and that's our stories. We'd love to hear from the folks out there, if anybody's watching, what their stories are. So please share them with us and let us, somebody's calling me right in the middle from DC. So share your stories with us. Let us know what you remember and what you care about when it comes to Earth Day and climate change. We're going to now move in a little bit, talk about the infrastructure policy. So I know that the one that has been promulgated can be very contentious. So I hope we don't, get into any arguments on the ISI podcast, but I'm curious to see just what your thoughts are. And then we'll transition to talking about how we think Envision really is the solution, that no matter what infrastructure plan gets through, Envision is something that they need to seek out and in the AEC industry to make it happen. So, John, we'll start with you this time. Your thoughts, if you would, on the infrastructure proposed plan that we have right now.
Well, I'm happy to weigh in on this debate as to what is and isn't infrastructure. And I agree with a recent Washington Post opinion piece dated April 6th, and it was entitled, "Our Debate Over Real Infrastructure is Dumb." And here's why I agree. And let's connect some dots. First, the systems and services that influence the stability of the planet, health and well-being of society, economy of nations, regional competitiveness, and resilience of communities are economic infrastructure. Economic infrastructure. Well beyond bridges within transportation networks, these systems deliver the necessities of a growing economy, including energy and water and waste services, communications and data networks, health and education, child and elder care, public space, safety and resilience, as well as the standards and rules, including the Envision rating system that shape, mold, deliver, and hold all these things together. They're necessary investments that in the US have been shortchanged for more than a half a century. Now, the pandemic, ice storms, recession, and expanding wealth gap have revealed the extent of our vulnerability and our declining competitiveness. So it's time to invest again. And it's time this time to invest in 21st century challenges, including insisting on fair and equitable results. Investments should be prioritized based on merit and life cycle cost effectiveness. Now, that's a new term that you're going to be hearing a lot more about, including the acronym LCCE, life cycle cost effectiveness. You're going to be hearing about that along with merit-based funding very soon. In the meantime, there are planning and policy tools already in place that can help, including Envision. And if you know, Envision 3.0, LD 3.3 already addresses life cycle cost analysis and different levels of cost benefit analysis. A couple more hints out there can be found in the form of the new guiding principles for sustainable federal buildings and OMB Circular 13990, which places a lot of emphasis on carbon. Each of these require consideration of the value of carbon as well as other public benefits and their social, environmental, and economic returns on investment in exchange for public funding. Now, I know that we're all hoping massive sums of money will simply flow in to a system of practices that were developed around 20th century problems. That's dumb. Okay, we live in the 21st century today. And if you expect to benefit from those funds, be ready to produce smart economic infrastructure, including fair and equitable solutions that deliver returns on investment that are positively impactful across the triple bottom line. That's how we'll create economic infrastructure that assures a sustainable world.
John, I love everything you said, but you know what? I'm not 100% certain that we're going live right now. My computer says we are, but I just got a message from LinkedIn saying they're having difficulties and problems. So maybe somebody called me from Washington to try to tell me that they're not seeing it. So let me do something right now, because I'm not getting any comments either. So that makes me think that it's not happening.
Okay.
And I keep pressing the go live button, but it looks like it's not taking place. And I think it must be some kind of error with LinkedIn. So hold on just a second. Okay, I'll put it on pause. Sure.
While I try to get at you.
I'll keep talking just in case we're live.
If this is being recorded, we can always rebroadcast it another
This
time.
is true too. Hold on just a second. Let me see if I hear them. Hello? Hello?
Hey, Diane, it's Christy.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Are we on? Is it not going broad? Is it not live?
No, it's not. It has to broadcast.
Okay.
And like we're kind of starting to say that they have to go.
Yeah, it's something with LinkedIn. I keep pressing the button and it's not working. So let me try again. I'll try one more time to press it. But thank you. We'll just keep going and record it maybe and air it. Thank you. Yeah, let them know there seems to be a problem with LinkedIn. It's not going live. Okay, thanks. Bye. Yeah, it's telling me a message that we have until 1 and then it ends. But it keeps saying go live, and I keep pressing the button, but it won't let us go live.
Probably a lot of demand today for these kind of forums on LinkedIn.
You know, I bet you that's exactly what it is. And now I feel bad because we had a great discussion where you were telling us your thoughts on the infrastructure plan, and it was all discombobulated, you know, but if Frank, if you want to, we could, like I said, we may still be recording, so I can always edit this part out. So
All right.
tell us what you think. I have both sides. I'm fair. We have both sides at the table.
Well, I'm not sure there's a both sides here. I agree with everything John just said. 100%. I hope he's absolutely 100% right. Life cycle costing, along with other considerations having to do with environment and social issues, I think is the foundation of Envision. It is the foundation of what we ought to be doing in making these investments. I think one thing that I've sort of been awakened to over the past year, now being an elected official for a very small infrastructure provider and service deliverer, and that's a water district, is that infrastructure isn't just at the national level. It's not just at the state level or even the county level. I mean, there are infrastructure providers, there are people responsible for infrastructure all the way down to water districts, to fire districts, to sewer districts, et cetera, that are basically sustained by relatively small staff and relatively inexperienced or less experienced board members who, in my case, the board members are all sort of my age, and they come from different walks of life and different careers, and now they're on the Oregon coast where I am, and they're doing this sort of as a volunteer support activity without pay. So I think we ought to look at there are a variety of people who are providing infrastructure in a variety of different ways, and they all need support in various cases and situations. Second, I think that in our country, we have made our infrastructure delivery process so complicated and so time consuming that as we talk about building back better, my hope is that we also take a look at all the things that are standing in the way of getting infrastructure on the ground and working for us. Because right now it is a horror show trying to get viable, good projects on the ground. And if there's a bad project out there, they deserve an answer within a reasonable time. You don't know, we're not going to permit you, or no, we're not going to do this or that or the other thing. So while we're building back better, while we're investing more dollars, let's also take a really critical look at the whole permitting and environmental clearance process leading up to infrastructure investment. Otherwise, it's going to take forever to get these investments on the ground. And no matter how much money Congress and the president put out there, it's going to be very, very slow to get it going. So let's find a way to deliver the projects better, faster, more efficiently, and not just have a grandiose plan that still provides challenges in getting the projects done.
Diane, if I could just make a suggestion, I think we could have another fascinating podcast on that very subject. How do we accelerate the project delivery process, and how do we use something called community equity agreements to safeguard the local community as the pace picks up, to make sure they don't get crushed by a project? But that's for another time. So go ahead.
No, I agree. And I was thinking the same thing when I heard him talking about it, because I know a lot of people in the AEC industry really care about this permitting process. And it's one step in the chain that really needs to be addressed. So I totally concur. Well, now that we've talked about our thoughts on the plan, and I'll just say for mine is very basic. I think that no plan will ever be perfect, but I think I'm glad to see one is on the table. I hope they come together and can massage it into something that both sides can agree upon, so we can get this done, because we need to meet the challenges in the next century, and we're not going to do it if we don't start now. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. We'll move on real quickly to talk about Envision. You kind of mentioned it, John. We really do believe that Envision is the solution for building back better, because I think that it starts with people. These projects, they're for people. If you have a sustainability professional who is on your staff guiding these projects, who can suggest innovative ways, who can think about natural resources and just work with the community, I think it's the first step in the chain of being able to build back better. What do you think, John?
I couldn't agree more, but I'd like to sort of turn the clock back once again to explain how we got to where we are right now when it comes to Envision. We all know, anybody who works in the world of sustainability or resilience knows one of the big challenges is those subjects are extremely broad and complex. And design professionals need the benefit of well thought out guidance that's consistent from project to project and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. In 2007, there were almost 900 sustainability assessment tools around the world. Many of them were proprietary. None of them represented a standard. They were not helpful because they produce confusion, conflict, and a resistance to use a system that somebody else created or that someone else might benefit from financially. And forget about comparability. You could not compare projects that are evaluated through different systems. And so a group of us recognized that the ASCE, ACEC, APWA, and the Harvard Zofnass Program for Sustainability were also offering similar but different rating systems. And they were contributing to the challenge of getting to an accepted standard. So a decision was made to join forces between those entities, those four major entities that, by the way, represent more than 600,000 members, to combine the best efforts of each of the four systems. And that's when ISI was born. And ISI's president today, Anthony Kane, was part of the original Zofnass team. And he worked with Bill Wallace and others to reconcile the legacy systems into what we now know as Envision 1.0. Now, as a result, we finally have a broadly recognized system that meets the industry's overarching goal of assessing sustainability of a wide variety of infrastructure projects. And hundreds of charter firms have signed on. Many of them shelved their own efforts to create proprietary tools. They were followed by major public agencies like LA Metro, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Kansas City, Miami-Dade County, and many other jurisdictions and public officials at all levels of government. And most important, thousands of planning, design, and construction professionals signed up for training and earned their EMVSP credentials. So in over 10 years, or over less than 10 years, more than $100 billion of projects have received Envision verifications. And right now we have about another 31 billion pending. So today, ISI is self-sustaining, its staff is growing, and its presence is being felt across North America and the EU. ISI is filling a need for high quality, time-tested standard that is objective and consistent. And our findings are comparable, and thousands of professionals know how to use the system. So public entities see value in making the case for sustainable and resilient infrastructure. And so fast forward to today, Earth Day 2021, and the good news is that public policymakers and their procurement officers have discovered that they can specify the use of Envision, and they know exactly what they're going to get. They're going to get competence, comparability, incredible findings, not to mention membership in a community of sustainability professionals that's making a huge difference for future generations.
I love the sound of that. I love the history. I did not know that there were 900 different.
Just under 900, yep.
What? And I really have drunk the Kool-Aid. So I am one of the biggest cheerleaders and fans. I am a champion of this. I believe in it. Frank, you're an EMVSP. What are your thoughts on how Envision can be a really good tool for the infrastructure industry in this Building Back Better?
Let me mention three things. First, as the chair of the academic committee for ISI, we are working every day, every week to get Envision into the classroom, not just in the teaching area, but also in the research area, which we think is just as important, because vital research can come out of the university setting and then be applied into the real world. And that happens every day, especially at the major civil engineering schools and land grant universities. Second, the thing I think that's most beneficial about Envision is that you can look at any one of the credit areas and you can see exactly how to get to a certain acceptable level, and what would be expected in order to do that. And it makes sense. These are logical, reasonable, attainable levels in each of the credit areas. Finally, it's not just meeting a minimum standard. Envision actually allows you, encourages you to actually go beyond kind of a net zero impact and even go to a restoration level so that you can actually make the environment in certain areas of your project, certain credit areas, you can actually make the environment better than you found it to begin with. And there are many, many examples where people were building, for instance, they're building wastewater treatment plants, and they've done some extra steps to make it accessible as a park or as a public use area, and combine uses that were once thought to be completely opposite and had to be torn apart. They brought these uses, public uses, together so that you get an infrastructure benefit on one side and you get a public use community benefit on the other side. And we're not casting the infrastructure elements to some industrial backwater part of the community. We're bringing them up forward, up front, so we can see how they work. We can make these things accessible, explainable, but we also integrate them into the community itself. So those are, I think, the three things that I want to touch on, which is get it in the classroom, get a new generation interested, involved with Envision. Second, take a look at Envision as a benchmark for what you can do, what you will be expected to do. And then third, look at the restoration, look at the going beyond the minimum and making this a system that really works for everybody and leaves the area, the project area, better than you started.
Can I expand on Frank's remarks, Diane?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes, please do.
Frank, as we were talking before the webcast began, or the podcast began, Frank and I were talking about the boxes that have to be checked in order to deliver infrastructure projects. And I think, Frank's work to get it into the university setting, get it in front of students is a great precursor to getting it into professional practices. And it's time for our professional practices to think beyond checking boxes, to think systematically, as Frank has already alluded, and to think about the real value of those benefits, not just the direct benefits associated with the infrastructure, but the benefits to the community and to society and to the environment altogether. That's why we deliver infrastructure projects. It's because there's some deficit and a need that has to be addressed, and our projects tend to address those needs. But one of the other neat things that I've already mentioned about Envision is that Envision will show you how to make a business case for your project, show you the value of public benefit in exchange for public dollars. And so, I want to encourage everybody, dig into it. You'll find these nuggets and they'll help you a lot as we face these new challenges today.
Great comments, guys. I absolutely love everything I'm hearing, and I agree. And I really know that we have a lot of ENVSPs out there, many of them itching to verify projects.
Yeah.
Because once you get into verifying a project, you really start to see how Envision makes a difference. And so we encourage owners and folks to use Envision. And that brings me to the next portion of this, advocacy. How do we get federal elected officials and others, local, state, et cetera, to realize that Envision is here and that you don't need to have all these, how do we do that? How do we get them to say this is a really good way to get the ball rolling and to get infrastructure to be built better, more critically, with the community? What do we do? Any answer?
I think the first thing is, remember, we talked at the beginning of the podcast about where we were with the environmental movement and where we were with integrating environmental considerations into infrastructure starting back in 1970. And it took a while to get the process kind of integrated into the project delivery system. We can talk about how successful or not successful that's been, but I think we're at the same stage now with sustainability that we were with environmental considerations 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And so I think slowly it's being viewed not just as an add-on, not just as a luxury for projects, it's being viewed as a necessity at some level. And whether it's Envision or something else, I guess we can still talk about. Envision is a great tool to use. There are others out there that are being used, and that's fine. But the whole issue of how to integrate it without layering on another set of procedures, I think, is something we ought to think about, which is if we want to put Envision in place, I think there are enough environmental considerations, enough community considerations, and other considerations that we should really consider taking something else off the table or revising it substantially so that we're not just heaping on another requirement. And I think that's a case to be made too, is we're talking about more efficient delivery of projects. We ought to say Envision can replace this or that or the other process that's already in place. And instead of saying, well, Envision ought to be added onto the top of, because some, especially small infrastructure deliverers are struggling, believe me, they are struggling to cope with just today's, we'll call it pre-construction related activities. So if we can help them along, if we can make the sale and say, let's talk about a broader streamlined project delivery system with Envision being a channel by which you can take a look at we call it, the triple bottom line. We talk about people, we talk about money, we talk about the planet. How do we get Envision kind of in the chairman's chair to make sure that it leads the way into all of these other issues? And then if you want to do in-depth, biodiversity studies or other assessments or groundwater control or whatever else you need to do for your project, God bless. But let's start the planning process with Envision. Let's start the environmental review process with Envision and then see what needs to be done.
I like the sound of that. What do you think, John?
I agree. I totally agree. And I think that what we're doing right now at ISI is we're focused on accelerating the pace at which we're scaling the use of Envision. And we know, having learned from LEAD that preceded us, that it was thanks to a federal mandate and subsequent state and local mandates that catalyzed the explosive growth of LEAD. And given emerging policy, this is the time. This is the time. Okay, the market is looking for what we have to offer. And given this new policy that's encouraging the development of sustainable and resilient infrastructure, and at the same time insisting on objective evidence of those results, now's the time to press hard on policymakers, including federal agencies that fund infrastructure projects, and encourage them to think beyond LEED and sustainable buildings to achieve similar outcomes with horizontal construction and civil projects. An Envision rating backed by LCCE assessments and business cases addresses several policy objectives of this current White House and the money they're trying to use to fund infrastructure. They're looking for essential evidence of concrete steps that have been taken to deliver the right projects for the right reasons. So if we follow the money through layers of government to the project level and show how the implementation of Envision even addresses criteria for merit-based funding, along with LCCE requirements, we should be on our way. And Frank mentioned there are other rating tools for sure. Some of them are amongst those original 900. Envision is the only one that satisfies those three key points.
I agree. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do with this podcast, build this awareness, reach out to our officials, let them know this is here. And, all we can do is keep our fingers crossed and keep pushing and encourage people to get out there and write their lawmakers and keep writing articles and keep pushing. That's how it happens. I mean, a lot of times with these things, you try, and then you just need one in. And when you have that in, then it just takes off like a rocket. And so, but it's the journey of getting there, which sometimes can happen overnight, and sometimes it can take a really long time. So, we'll just keep plugging away. That's why we're trying the Sustain It or Explain It podcast, and hopefully we'll get somewhere with what we're trying to do. Isn't that right, Frank?
Absolutely. Agree 100%.
Exactly.
By the way, Dan, I love the Sustain It or Explain It tagline. I love that.
Well, thank you.
We should be doing that. People should be challenge us to make sure that we do that.
I totally love it too. And I know when I first said, hey, I want to call it this, I got some people scratching their head going, you sure? And I was like, yeah, I definitely do. So thank you. That means a lot to me. That makes me happy. And I'm very grateful to all of the people who are on the task force, like Frank, and people like John who support what we're doing at ISI and Envision. So with that, I think we've pretty much covered everything, except I do want to make a few plugs. Was there anything we missed, guys, that we needed to talk about? Or are we good?
Well, one more thing, I think, and that is the constituent. We've talked about government. We talked about infrastructure deliverers. We ought to talk about the constituency. And I think people are expecting that if you're going to spend a whole bunch of money, that we better do it right, and we better prove that we're doing it the best possible way. And Envision creates a framework to do that. And so it's not just we need to do it because we need to do it, or we've got a environmental impact report that's 12 inches high. It's the issue of, are we proving that this was the right combination of steps? This was the right package of particular elements in the project. Did we do everything we could do to eliminate urban hotspots, or create better environment, or create training for disadvantaged elements in the community? Or did we hire the right people? Did we make sure that we had the right subcontractors and the right representation of the community in which we were going to build these facilities? So this is a way, if you look at all the credit elements in Envision, this is a way to get to all those steps, and you can have an intelligent conversation with the constituents that said, yes, we did all those things, we looked at all those elements, And we made sure that this was the best possible investment to the community in order to get this particular infrastructure item done.
I was on mute. Could you read my lips? I was like, I love that, Frank. That speaks to the heart of it. And that's why they should be using ENBSPs. There should be ENBSPs in the RFPs. So they should be asking for this right up front, that this is a requirement to have an ENBSP on this project. And, I'm going to keep beating on verification and say, you got to try verification, because that's where the proof comes. Like that, when you verify that project, that's where you're getting that proof. You have it right here. It's with, you can't just say it, you've got it to show. So excellent points. All right, I'm going to plug a few things. I think the first one is for you. Tell us about this, John. What is this all about?
Well, this is a combination, or it's a group of organizations, including ISI, ASCE, the Canadian Society of Civil Engineering, and the Institution of Civil Engineers. And I want to invite people. This is a virtual meeting being planned for May 25th and 26th. I'm representing ISI, and I'm hoping that others will join that session, my plenary session called Global Engineering Commitment to Sustainable and Climate Resilient Infrastructure. And I'll be joined by leaders from the other organizations as well, but we hope you show up.
Yeah, it's coming right around the corner, the 25th and the 26th of May, the Triennial Summit. Yeah. So please jot that down, folks, and look for it. The next one I want to tell you about is we have an impact investing webinar that's coming up May 12th at 1 p.m. This is, I think, very important right now. It's a little bit different. I learned from green. I don't know a lot about impact, green investing. I'm just not a good investor. But there is a difference, and you can learn about it when you go to this webinar. Also, for the Sustain It or Explain It, we have what I'm calling the Act Now Advocacy Panel. I didn't have a name, so I came up with this really fast. Might change, don't know. August 26th is the date. It's going to be on LinkedIn. Hopefully we won't have any problems that day like we're having today because of Earth Day. Who knew that Earth Day would have this many people try to go live on LinkedIn, crashing their site and whatnot? But that is going to be a series of people trying to help us to advocate for Envision. And hopefully those people can give us some good tips and some good advice on what they've done so that we can scale this and really make a difference. But that's it. That's the whole program for today. Did you guys have anything else we need to say? Are we good?
Well, can I make a selfish announcement, Diane? You could always edit
You
this.
can always, yes, go for it.
Today, Earth Day 2021, my company, AutoCase, is announcing the integration of our AutoCase software for buildings with the ARC Digital Planning Performance Platform. This is one of Green Business Certification's products. It looks at building operations. This is a building product, not an infrastructure product, but I hope people check it out.
All right. What do we need to do? We just need to go to social media or go to your website, or?
You can go to our website. You can go to arc.com.
Arc.com.
You can send an email to me, john.williams@autocase.com.
Okay. And what's your website, John?
It's www.autocase.com.
Autocase.com. Easy to remember. Love Autocase. And Frank, do you have anything you need to plug before we go? Anything you
Just thank ISI for putting on the podcast, and thank the folks who are viewing it either live or in rerun, and hopefully we can get some things done.
Yeah, what I might do, because I don't think we were able to ever get on. I kept trying and we couldn't. Is just splice up some sound bites, issue the whole thing, do it in many different ways, put it on our website, that kind of stuff. So we'll definitely get some things out there, because it was a good discussion. I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
I wonder, Diane, a lot of the virtual conferences are pre-recording the main talk, and then they're following up with 15 or 20 minutes of live.
Mm-hmm.
Q&A. I wonder if we could offer this again, and as a pre-recorded event, but we could be there and participate in Q&A when it's time.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love that. Yeah, I see no reason why we can't. So, and in fact, we need to do that more to get people engaged. We need those questions. So we could promote that. Yeah.
And today they have all kinds of programs tugging at them. We may get a better audience if we're not mixed in with 40 world leaders and all the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah, no kidding. It's right now, Earth Day 2021. I keep wanting to say 2020. I haven't, maybe I want to do 2020 over.
Yeah.
It was such a bad year. Anyway, well, thanks very much, guys. I'm glad it went it went well for us, for all three of us.
Yeah, you got your content. So.
Exactly. Thank you. And I'm going to play the outro. So here we go.
Bye.
That's the intro. This will all be edited, I promise.